Welcome guys, gals, and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary, and yes, a feminist perspective. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is your other ravenous host.
Brian, hi.
How are you?
Hungry,
yeah. I was kind of
hungry
like,
for the truth.
hungry for the truth of in fiction. And I also felt I don't really pick a lot of adjectives for you from the second half of the alphabet, which you have shared with me. Is a side of the alphabet which you think is less likely to contain the human soul.
Yeah, thanks for immediately betraying my trust on that one. I was telling you last night when I was like maybe up to the age of 7, I had a fairly convincing working theory in my like insane child brain that anyone who had a first name that ended with the letters J or later, or could have been K or later. I think it might have started. I think
you're editorializing here, to be honest, but go on.
Didn't have a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sorry, Dad, and you're welcome to everyone else in my family. But it was weird. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that one.
Yeah.
It was an odd one.
Another piece in the old Brian puzzle, the Brian bric-a-brac.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we're here this week to talk about season 5, episode 9 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is entitled "Listening to Fear."
I think when I said soul, that's probably how I understood it at the time, but I meant consciousness, like not just like.
Well, the soul is consciousness, isn't it?
Well, I think that's the from
a philosophical point of view, what do you think, Brian, about the human soul?
So, but like so I think everyone else I thought was like they were automatons or kind of like just non-conscious,
changelings,
entities. I'm not sure.
Homunculi.
I always remember being like, why would you even name your child one of those letters then?
Because they're cursed. Why will you use the cursed 50% of the alphabet?
Yeah. No. Okay. This episode is Listening to Fear.
It is indeed.
Season 5, episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
It was first aired on November 28th, 2000. So it would have been around Black Friday. I think that is usually Black Friday around then.
Did Black Friday exist 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The US has been around since the 80s, I want to say.
Okay.
But it only kind of became a big thing in the early noughties in the US. It was written by David Solomon, who last wrote No Place Like Home, and it was directed by David Solomon, and it was written by Rebecca Rand Kirshner. I need to start writing more clearly. Like that word could say Rand, Raid, Roud. I've seen
Dade.
Anyway.
I've seen these great little workbooks where you can kind of trace the letters along to practice, and then they kind of give you example sentences you can write out if you want to try one of those.
Cool. After this episode, I'm going to tweet out samples of both of our handwriting. My handwriting looks like an adult handwriting, i.e. kind of messy, but I can read it. Joel's handwriting looks like a child who was forced to write with his left hand when he's definitely left-handed.
That did happen. Is that not normal? Go on.
They don't do that anymore. That used to be a thing. I'm not sure if that's a thing outside of Ireland, but in Ireland, up until the 80s, I would say, and I know certainly one of my uncles had this happen, where children were forced to write with their right hand, even if they were left-handed, because it was seen as a sign of Satan.
I can see that happening outside of Ireland.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Maybe not for Satan, but just generally for being.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah,
strange.
That was the thing. So Rebecca Rand Kirshner, who last wrote Out of My Mind. Okay, and I'll get you your Buffy summary now. Ben summons a meteor-dwelling queller, which starts killing the madmen created by Glory's mind suck. The tumor has made Joyce deranged. When she is allowed home for the night, the queller follows her. Dawn fights it off. Buffy and Spike kill it. Joyce realizes the truth about Dawn, but like Buffy, accepts her as her own. Joyce goes into surgery. So, quick note for this is that we did take last week off of work, i.e. our hobby, which is doing this Buffy Ann summary podcast, because I can't remember I think we were just tired and had a lot to do. So that means that we watched this absolute shit show of an episode like well over a week ago, and the Angel episode even longer ago. So my memories of it have deteriorated, quite similar to someone who might be pursued by the Queller Demon.
I feel like Glory's mind suck is like a title you would see for an anime character's special ability that would come up on an iCatch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, obviously her mind suck ability. Yeah.
Yeah, or even just like it's someone to Queller.
Yeah.
Queller what? Just, I mean, that is a good question. Like, what is the quality?
Yeah. So before we unpack the rich, Moorish and nutritious literary themes of this episode, for our bronze banter, we actually have something legitimate to talk about, which is that we've been mining a little bit more left of field, trying to find good television, because as many people have during the quarantine, we've watched all television pretty much.
Except for the good ones that I keep asking us to watch, like Sopranos and The Wire.
Yeah, no,
I have seen The Wire before. It's very important.
I would prefer to watch fun, enjoyable television. That's not true. I do like good shows. We haven't done those
Joe,
yet.
you clearly do not enjoy watching fun, enjoyable television. You are nearly finished Doctor Who. And I don't mean new Who, I mean classic Who.
Yeah, I have watched nearly 26 seasons of classic Doctor Who.
Joel, you do not enjoy watching enjoyable TV shows. You watched recreations of lost second Doctor episodes where someone only had the audio, so people did like bizarre illustrated summaries, storyboarded of the episodes. You watch those rapidly.
It's actually far worse than that. What these recreations of episodes of Doctor Who from the 60s, which were lost because the BBC overwrote all the videotapes, are called Telesnaps. And what they are is that home amateur video enthusiasts in the 60s took photos of their television screens as the episodes were airing, and those photos have been put to the audio which survived, and that is how we now watch these episodes. Yeah. Anyway,
so we watched a bunch of documentary now. We're only I think one episode into season 3.
What is documentary now?
So it is a bunch of SNL people. So Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, and a lot of it is written by Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers, who did, and I think it's Lorne Michaels produced. Seth Meyers, who does the Tonight Show, I think, or one of the late night shows. Yeah, he's actually one of the better ones. He's one of the ones who you watch on YouTube every so often, and you're like, oh, that's reasonable. But it's a series where comedians do parodies / homages to classic or new documentary formats. So the first episode is a piss take of Grey Gardens, and it treads heavily on the piss take element in that episode, where it descends into like insane murder, but it's absolutely deranged and brilliant. And Bill Hader and Fred Armisen play the main characters in every episode, pretty much. Another episode has The Artist Is Waiting, which is Marina Abramovich. Mm-hmm. Which I loved that documentary when it came out. I think it's wonderful, and their version of it has as a main character Kate Blanchett.
Yeah,
and
through the whole episode,
I think it might be the best thing I've ever watched.
Never seen you happier, to be honest.
Yeah, they do a very long. They do a great Stop Making Sense, which is the Talking Heads concert film. They do a great version of that, and all sorts of stuff. We've we picked up a couple of documentaries that were like, oh, we should watch that because of this. Because I've watched a lot of documentary over the years, but there's some classic American kind of stuff that I haven't seen. But it's been really good. Have you been enjoying it, Joe?
It's been very interesting because I don't know loads of documentaries the way you do be knowing them. So some of them I do recognise, but some
Jiro
of them...
Dreams of Sushi is one.
Jiro Dreams of Sushi is one as well, yeah.
Everyone has seen.
But it's a very, very good show. It's one I've never heard of. It's really not on the radar. But it is something which I enjoy and which I've come to enjoy more and more, is it portrays a tremendous amount of skill and competency and awareness of material,
the style, and
because when we think of homage, we think of satire. It's fairly broad strokes. It's fairly like, Cher and throwing her hair over her shoulder, which she never actually did. But these episodes are more like you have to really be understand the documentary, know it well, know the beats, and be able to play off it and make it both interesting to people who aren't super familiar with it, but also just such a fascinating study of it. So it's so much better than any satire I've seen for a long time. Mm-hmm. And also I think we have loved and been very fond of Bill Hader ever since we watched Barry, which we probably talked about on this podcast.
I hope so. If we didn't, Barry seasons 1 and 2 are around. I think season 3 potentially was filmed pre-coronavirus, but maybe have gotten interrupted. But is an absolutely stunning piece of TV. It's funny, stupid, touching, and dark and incredibly violent at times, and just absolutely brilliant. Bill Hader is an absolute talent.
So Bill Hader, who is probably most widely known for playing one of the adult characters in the second It film, probably most widest release, but yeah, he was in Barry. He's one of the main players in documentary now, and it's just like disappears into a character, an impressionist, a satirist, to the same way. I think obviously not to the same degree, but like people who are really incredible at embodying characters, like your Jim Carreys and your Robin Williams, who really disappear into those characters. I think he does the same for me here, and just it's really really impressive. It's enjoyable to watch something done really well. Yeah,
and we had said we would talk about Bly Manor, but I think we're fine to talk about it for now, because we haven't finished it. We were on episode 5 of Bly Manor, which is the season 2 to Haunting in Hill House, and we've talked about it like 4 times in the podcast already. But
it's been a lot of fun.
Specifically fun,
screaming, scary, spooky, scary.
It's just very atmospheric, and it does over a long period of time, so there's no crazy jump scare. Well, no significant crazy jump scares.
No cheap jump scares.
No, and it's creating a great haunting environment, and there's lots of ghosties in the background, which I really like, and I scared the shit out of Joel watching it.
You did, and we won't talk about it. But a secret for you to go and watch it. Not only is it good horror, it has queer content in it as well. That's worth watching. So
it has some good. It's not like it's not revolutionary queer content,
but it's there.
It's there, and it's textual. Okay.
So speaking of textual queer content,
is there any in this episode?
Willow and Tara are in the episode.
They're just there though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just text. That's just there.
Yeah. So this episode, I think it's probably one of the worst. It's really bad. It's has some great moments. So Buffy crying, listening to samba music and turning up the samba music on the radio while she's washing dishes, and listening to her mother go insane upstairs, and her being very scared. And then at the end of the episode, the Dawn isn't real stuff, and we have to, and watching Joyce go off to have her surgery, all very touching. But otherwise, I mean, like if you had the 1-2 punch of space demon, space like louse demon crawling around trying to suck out your kill your madness people, and then also Riley being shit in every way, it's like, does this have any redeeming qualities?
It has a couple of elements which are I think utterly unreplicated in other Buffy episodes, and one is as you say, that the plot of the episode is like something from, there's a couple of sub X-Files or pre X-Files kind of shows, like Kolchak: The Night Stalker, or Baywatch Nights, which is an actual show where the Baywatch cast investigated mysteries. That is the tone of this monster. So it is there's actually a couple of significant plot things happening in this. One is that we get a very clear indication that Ben, the intern who has really been shoehorned into scenes in the hospital,
is associated with
Gloria,
and is a bad player. So that was a big step forward, because at the end of the episode he's talking to, what's his name?
Flank or Stonk or something. Gorp.
Dredge.
It's close.
I think it's
Dreg.
Dreg. Talking to him in his car and saying, why did you do this? And he's like, well, I have someone that's cleaning up after Glory, who has been summoning all these demons. What's very funny about that, of course, is that Glory, or cleaning up the mess there, getting rid of those madness
people.
the people who have been infected by her brain sucking and have gone insane. I think it's really appropriate. It's really not appropriate to bring conversations of mental illness into this context, because there's no shades, there's no grayness to this. It's just a inconsistent babbling, quotation marks, insanity / madness that has been magically done. Let me
give you a through line into this, okay? Glory does something to them which gives them symptoms which are mistaken for mental illness.
Yeah.
And it is a traditional and medieval concept of madness, you know. So I think we refer to them as people who've been driven insane. That is, in a supernatural context, that is what she's doing. It's being, and this episode I think codifies that they're being misunderstood as people who have individual illnesses, but they're all doing the same thing. So it's not that. Yeah,
exactly. So it's just there are almost no situations in which you should refer to a person as being mad or insane on the basis of their mental health problems.
Insanity is a status effect that she's applying with her magical powers, essentially.
So that's the context for which we're using the phrase, I suppose. So she's covering her own. She's removing her own ability to identify the key because they're able to see the key for what it is, and she doesn't realize this. And by removing them from the equation, even though it does cover her tracks in terms of like, you know, she has a body count racking up. It doesn't.
It's removing a resource.
Yeah, exactly. Which is interesting.
And Ben does say that he's been clinging up for Glory all of his life. So it does tie to the idea that she's been with him since he was a baby.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all in that respect. And yeah, so every other aspect of this show doesn't really stray very close to even quasi science fiction. I know we've talked about there's elements of that before, and I think it's an interesting thing they do, but it's, you know, like as a kind of a curious thing they do. But their strength has always been in the medieval supernatural, and there are other dimensions, and hell might be a dimension, but it's also hell while you're there. But
I think the season part of the weakness of season 6 is how much they bring the trios, like, you know,
jetpacks,
like, you know, new tech nonsense into it, and it doesn't doesn't totally suit the thing. And also it's a problem with season 4. So
but essentially this demon is a demon which lives in a comet, many of which live in comics, circling the earth, and Ben calls it down, and they have a situation where, like, well, it's not a supernatural thing, it's a UFO, it's an alien extraterrestrial that is here, but it's also a demon. And it is gross, and its whole setup is gross, but it feels cheap as a man. No, I thought
it looks cheap.
It's absolutely gas to watch. But I think this, like, there was episodes of season 1 that were better than this in terms of some of the random stuff, if you know what I mean. I think there were creature features in seasons 1 and 2 that were like so strong compared to this. But I would see this as being kind of like in the thought through level of like Go Fish. Yes, exactly. And I think when we do encounter the Queller demon, when Buffy does, there is a sense of like, what is happening? Like, this isn't our thing. Even when the Scooby Gangs go to investigate the comet, they're like, we don't have any skill sets for this, you know? And then one of the other out of course elements of this is, again, centering Riley as kind of like the instigator of the investigation, calling in the initiative, or not the initiative, but the remnants of the initiative in the army now to help him. And like, all of this is like, I feel it's like a game that's kind of outbalanced. It's like, you can't do this, and that doesn't happen. That's not he's not playing by the rules of the fiction to a certain degree. And then we have his contrived plot where he is going to a.
Do you know what the name of that group is, by the way?
The initiative.
But like now that they're finished, the people who are left after the initiative.
What are they called?
Hindsight.
Hindsight. He is in like a vampire crackdown kind of thing, where he's getting fed on by vampires for purposes indeterminate.
Unfortunately, both clearly a brothel implications in terms of it being like a sex worker about to give him a blowjob. Like, there's no ambiguity there. But also then, like, you know, like distinct imagery of him shooting up
puncture marks from the.
You don't shoot up crack, obviously.
I don't know. I haven't finished the war yet.
So probably heroin. It's just awful. Like, I mean, next episode is Into the Woods.
Vampire crackdown is actually a term from the script, by the way. That's not me editorializing.
And you know, if Riley wants to go into the woods, that's fine with me.
So where are the strengths in this episode? Because they are there. One, that the interplay between the three Summers women is very strong and very, very worthwhile. And I think specifically, as you identified, there's Buffy. Buffy has had a tonal shift, I feel, because she has gone from something has catalyzed inside of her where she's gone from feeling incredibly vulnerable because of this, or outwardly vulnerable and outwardly scared and starting to spin out, and now she's starting to take on more of that maternal role and more of that kind of taking charge of the situation, saying, this is going to be fine, we're going to manage this, we're going to bring you home, Joyce, we're going to do this with Dong. And then only when she is in samba zone that she's bursting out in tears. And as always, Sarah Michelle Gellar crying is so like traumatizing. It's so like full body racking sobs whenever she cries.
She's just a wonderful actor.
And the highlight, by far the gem of this episode to take away, is at the end when Joyce has realized that Dong is not her native child, but is very adamant that no matter what happens, that Buffy has to protect her because she is ours, she is of us, which is something which I think is very affecting. I think it's very I'm very for. I don't necessarily know how her and Buffy have gotten there to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Because I feel slightly plot motivated, where if you had a genuinely malevolent creature who had done the exact same things, you could also see the other side of the argument where you'd be like, imposter, yeah,
absolutely.
But sometimes people are mercurial like that. Sometimes people are inexplicable, and I think it's in keeping with their giving personalities to be like, Dawn has just consistently been very kind in these episodes.
Yeah. I think it's a mixture of two things. I think it's one is that the memories are still there, and fake though they may be, they are real to these characters. But then additionally, you have the aspect of Dawn is a real person. Mm-hmm. After having been the key, she doesn't she continues to be a person, and that's what's been communicated to Buffy. I think it's something that they could hit home further, is like they could reiterate this, is that beyond anything, this is a child. Yeah, so I think so too. I think the response of, well, of course we're going to try to take care of Dawn forever because of reasons that we're not going to quite explain. It always sounded a bit odd with me. I think there's probably a couple of writing notes there. One is that Dawn really is meant to embody a non-Buffy child. Mm-hmm. So she's pretty much the age that Buffy was at the beginning. When she became a Slayer, she's I think Buffy was 15 becoming the Slayer.
Yeah, she's in around there, yeah.
So they're about the same age. She's also that bit more, she doesn't have the same burdens that Buffy does. She's able to have a more free childhood. And I think for a lot of this, what the reason Dawn's there is to give Buffy a reason to mature and to take on adult responsibilities, because she has someone who's depending on her. And with that, you have her. Yeah, when you give that to Buffy, I think you then have to explore kind of that facet of growing up, which is, I don't know, it's interesting. And I don't think you would get that otherwise. So I think that's I think it's a way to bring Buffy closer to where they want her to be by the end of the show. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely correct in the sense that there's no believable way. There's no more believable or more engaging way for Buffy to get that maturity than having to take on a familiar role. And with her not having any siblings, injecting one is kind of a funny, a smart way to do it.
And I wonder if they knew that. Presumably they knew that. I don't think Christine Sutherland wanted to walk away from the show. I don't think it was a situation where she asked to be written out.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was a natural evolution of the character.
So if they knew that she was being killed off, I'd have to imagine that they wanted to be like, well, Buffy can't just be an orphan on her own in this house.
Yeah,
so that's probably part of the context.
That would be pretty tragic.
That would be so. Imagine the body minus Dawn. That would be even worse. So you have that, and then finally you have I'd say there's a writing aspect there where they had to be aware that they were potentially having their characters outgrow their audience. I'd say they were aware that the demographic of the show was probably skewing probably 12 to 17. So having a bunch of characters who are no longer in college, who are looking at business, weddings, taxes, fixing furniture stuff, it's not quite they had to find a way to maintain a bit of teenageness to the show, and that's what they lost with the college years.
Yeah, and
the college year.
So many shows have had to do that, and have done it really poorly. So I think this is a reasonably well integrated.
Yeah.
To do that,
Scrappy Doo, I suppose, is being the ultimate expression.
Yeah, the classic, and so many American sitcoms which we didn't watch and which aren't part of our cultural milieu, where they introduce a child character in season 7 or whatever. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Anyway, I think Dawn is a great version of it. I think Dawn gets integrated into the cast and into the show very quickly and very well.
Do you ever find yourself forgetting that Christine Sutherland or equivalent actors are still alive because their characters have died?
No, I whenever I see pictures of Christine Sutherland these days, especially I think there was a recent picture of the 3 of them, and I had a little cry. I was like, oh, that's so nice.
How old is Michelle Trachtenberg? She must be older than us.
Oh yeah. Michelle Trachtenberg was about 15 in 2001 or 2000.
Yeah, which I wasn't.
So she's about 5 years older than me.
Makes sense.
It's about 35, which is crazy.
You're doxing yourself right now.
Yeah. I remember when Sarah Michelle Gellar turned 35 or something a couple years, about 10 years ago, and I was like, that's crazy. I can't believe Buffy is so old. It's ooh, now I'm old. And one of the other weird aspects of this episode is that Spike gets highlighted a good amount. He's no longer the comic foil. He is no longer the enemy in traditional breakout character form. He's being integrated into the Scooby Gang in a way that I think is set to replace Riley in lots of ways, and is more integrated than Riley ever really was. So yeah, in this episode you kind of see him really helping out Buffy when it comes to actually killing the demon and stuff.
Are there any breakout characters that you actually like? Because I find you specifically don't like breakout characters.
Oh god, I'd have to look at a list of good breakout characters. I think probably one or two.
The one I always remember, which is commonly understood to be a massive breakout character, is Wolverine, and you're not a Wolverine fan.
I'm a big Wolverine anti-fan, yeah. I think Kenneth from 30 Rock is a breakout character, and he's grand. Omar Little is a breakout character. I love him.
Oh, you reckon?
Yeah, no, he 100% is. He wasn't meant to be like as big as in the plot as he is. They keep bringing him back because people fucking love Omar Little, and he's wonderful. I'm trying to think who else is. I was gonna make a joke. I was gonna say Lisa from 6 Feet Under, but I'm trying to think now who else is a breakout character.
What are some shows you like? I'll tell you who's a breakout character in them.
Buffy.
Okay, well, Spike.
My So-Called Life.
The Joker. Jordan
Catalano. Oh god. I was so great in Euphoria.
Yeah.
There's a scene where she goes into her little sister's room and she's like, "Oh, what are you watching?" And she's like, "My So-Called Life." And she's like, "Don't fall for Jordan Catalano. He's not good enough. He's gross." And she's like, "But he's so dreamy." And it's like, I loved that scene because it was so clearly, I mean, like, maybe there are teens sitting around watching My So-Called Life. If there are, like, fucking bless you, you beautiful, beautiful angels. But in general, I was just like, that is 100% just a writer saying, God, wouldn't it be so nice if someone saw this as their So-Called Life?
Yeah.
Anyway, My So-Called Life is, like, I think for me the most magical TV property that's ever existed, in the sense that it feels like it can't quite exist, because when I first wanted to watch it, you couldn't get it on DVD. It didn't exist on DVD. If it exists on DVD at all, it was only in the US.
You have a lot of DVD, VHS related trauma.
I know. It certainly didn't exist on VHS either. So I had to get it on LimeWire. I had to download the episodes, and there was only like 2 episodes that actually had anyone like seeding it or whatever it was called back then, sharing it, I suppose. And so I had to download those episodes, and one of them, so I watched them completely out of context, and one of them is called Esteem, I think, and it's probably the best episode of the show, and I was just like sitting there weeping as like a 14-year-old watching this. And then I found an eBay DVD box set, and I was like, oh, what, this doesn't even exist. So I bought it, but it was just like, ripped copies and like hand printed version of it, and then all the like DVDs had like bad scan lines printed onto it, and the actual quality of the episodes were like trash, and it smelled like weed. But I've since bought a real copy of the show.
Remember that time when the only way you could kind of reliably get box sets like that was off specifically ebay.com. I have a very vivid memory of one of my mom's friends when I was younger buying or looking to buy, and she was growing up, but she was looking to buy Xena the Warrior Princess box sets on eBay, and I was like, say it was 7 seasons, and it's like, you would only have to pay €150 for this box. Do you know what I mean? Like the expectations on that has varied massively.
Okay, should we move into the dusting, Joel?
Absolutely. Willow's KDR ratio in this episode, let's really knock it out of the park with the dusting.
Okay, so Buffy Bits. I have a couple of small ones for you. So the patient who is killed in this episode is, of course, the Night Watchman, as highlighted from the preview of the episode, from No Place Like Home, who was kind to Buffy and then got killed, or got sucked by Glory, thus ending his storyline. Tunguska Joe? The Tunguska event?
Yeah, this is mine, I think.
Oh, fuck you, okay. That's kind of it, really. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about this episode is that during the watching of the episode, we just you spotted a lot of bloopers where just people standing vaguely outside of frame, or... It's
quite and as we always say, that this wasn't necessarily meant to be visible in the 4:3 format, etc., but still, there's quite a lot of, like, boom operators standing in the entire scene, as opposed to just like, or like there was one where Riley's meant to be by himself and you can just see Anya standing there waiting for her cue, presumably.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an odd error for a relatively well-known like apocryphal event or whatever, but that Willow makes reference to potentially one of the last times that Queller Demon came was during the Tunguska event in 1917, which is an attempted reference to a real-life event called the Tunguska event in Tunguska, Russia in 1908, where there was... it was
the last significant meteor impact on Earth, right?
Well, see, we don't know. So there was I'm sure there's more modern theories about it which have reasonable explanations, but essentially there was an explosion of in an area of forest of, I'm off the cuff remembering this now, but like of several, say, dozen kilometers in a circular radius. There was nothing that existed.
Circular radius, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Oh, look, there was nothing that existed that could have made that kind of force at the time, flattening all these trees in the forest. If the explosion had have happened in a populated area, it would have been one of the biggest naturally occurring or seemingly naturally occurring disasters. But there was no impact site, so it's not considered to have been necessarily an asteroid impact. There's been theories where it's like that there could have been an asteroid burnt up just before hitting the surface and exploded, that it was an incredibly microscopic black hole detonation, and various theories about that. And I'm sure there are reliable scientific theories what actually happened, but basically it's been a flashpoint for science fiction to be like, oh, our thing, that was actually the Tunguska event. Yeah.
And yeah, Willow says the wrong date, so she says 1908.
She says 1917. That's 1908. But that's like, it's just
weird. It would
be
if we actually got that wrong too. But
yeah, no, well, I'm right. But like, it's just, yeah, it's a real top level Wikipedia title. So it's like, how'd you get this wrong? Yeah.
Okay. Maybe their encyclopedia was wrong that week.
They're in Carta.
I mean, if they're really lucky, they might have had in Carta. That is the joke from Community that has lasted with me the longest, I think, is when he's like, where'd you read that? In Carta? Stupid kids. It was just amazing. Anyway, okay. There is a point so fashion. There's a point in the episode where Willow is wearing a pink shearling jacket. I hated it and I loved it. Would you believe? And then Willow, at another point in the episode, wears like a velour, fluffy, like ruby colored coat. I didn't like it. I did like Dawn's teddy bear pajamas though. And I have a note that says, such a weird focus on that red plate. Oh yeah, when Buffy is doing the washing, she's just like staring at this red plate because it's her whole existence. And I was like, that's actually kind of like well done in a weird way. Yeah, Buffy crying to samba music is like, it was great.
The Queller Demon obviously was wearing a very fashionable snuggie throughout the whole episode.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I just have, like, my notes for this episode are, you're disgustingly fat, which is something that Joyce says to Buffy at one point.
Yeah.
She's real mean when she's losing her mind. Buffy crying. She's talking crazy. So yeah, a lot of really really deep analysis here.
Oh god, y'all, I have no idea what I'm going to put for my my rating out of 10. I'm so freaked. I have nothing. I have no notes. I have no memories. This is
guerrilla podcasting.
Yeah, I hate it. Okay, and death count, please.
Yeah, so there was actually a couple of deaths in this. There was 2 vampires dusted by Willow, 6 mental patients killed by the Queller Demon. Through some, again, we didn't even mention this, but like vomit some jelly consomme onto their mouth and they explode or something. I don't know, it's not good. And then Buffy just like fucking butchers the demon in her hall with a kitchen knife in a very Unslayer-like performance.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all the deaths.
Great. Okay, and what is your rating, Joel?
What is my rating for this episode? Oof, woof. I will give this episode... No, okay, I'll be professional at this. I will give this episode 4.5 asteroids with chewy centers.
Okay, great. Tim, for that.
So I think that the scene with Joyce is probably one of Joyce's best scenes. Talking about why we have to protect Dawn. I think Sarah Michelle Gellar does a great job of crying. And I think that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed, I particularly putting that moment at the end, I was like, I'm okay. I sat through this to get to this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had 4.8 in my brain, but I'm not sure if that 4.8 is like worse than your 4.5 in the sense that I think you probably thought it was better than I thought it was, but whatever. And 4.8, like ceiling demons out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like my Buffy when it's being stupid to be stupid and enjoy itself. No one was enjoying themselves this episode. They mixed really shitty monster with really heady themes.
Yeah.
It was a really bad mishmash of different things. Like Beer Bad. Give me Beer Bad any day of the week before this, where she's just like stupid sad over like a boy not being interested in her.
And see, the thing is, I don't feel like this is one of the episodes that people tend to throw up as like one of the worst episodes of Buffy.
Yeah,
so it's kind of snuck up on us to a certain degree.
I would always have remembered it as being one of the worst. And the monster design is shit, honestly. Joyce rambling is bizarre, and then when I mean, like if you take something like I, Robot You Jane, another classic example of a worst episode.
I Robot You Jane.
I love I, Robot You Jane because it's like it takes itself so seriously, but like this just doesn't do anything right. There's no aspect of this that makes it like an actually enjoyable episode to watch, even though I did enjoy it well enough. I enjoyed watching it with you. There you go.
Yeah, you remember it. You did a great run of Hades during that episode.
No, I did a great run of Hades during the Angel episode.
Okay. Speaking of Angel,
Cordelia Chase.
This is actually a palate cleanser comparatively.
Yeah, it was grand.
Yeah, this episode's called The Trial, and we're continuing the Darla arc over on Angel.
That's actually referred to as the Darla
Angle.
Darla
arc. No, I wish it was worse. And so essentially, Darla comes to Angel and is like, I'm starting to feel all these terrible things about being a bad person because I have a soul. By the way, I have a soul.
A very weird turn from last week when she ran away from him doing that. Yeah, but
she's processing it all. She's a reflector. She's doing her meditations, and essentially he goes to Lauren, to the host, to try and find a way to bring her back.
Find her path, basically. What's like that is Julie Benn singing, is it?
Yes.
She's quite good.
Yes, she does sing. She sings quite well. The active element here is that she has discovered, she's been informed by Wolf from Heart that she is still dying of syphilis.
Yes.
As she was when she was a sex worker in her human life.
17th
which is like,
century, I think, yeah.
Yeah, which is like a real jip, to be honest. But anyway, so she's still dying. And she has this whole conversation with Angel about whether she should kind of accept this, and maybe this is her second chance. Her second chance is to die as a human with a soul, with some redemption. And he's like, no, fuck that. I'm going to do some magic, basically. And it leads us to a perfectly interesting situation where he finds a secret tribunal type thing. He dives into an empty swimming pool. And is accepted into some otherworldly trial, and if he,
but those situations, I'm always like, would you not just like carefully climb down into the portal rather than dive face first and risk smashing your teeth out?
Very dramatic. And what was it when he dives into the pool? He's like, "This is either going to work, or I can see something very funny." And it's like a nice little scenario where he essentially has to defeat 3 trials. Of combat courage, etc. If so, he'll win a second chance of life for Darla. And it's like he has to fight a big guy, and then there's a hook, and then there's there's an English butler, kind of paracausal entity who's like, well, yes, welcome to the trials. We're going to show you through. No one's ever made it before, etc. You have my sympathies, etc. And then there's a whole thing where he has to and I cringe at this in a good way every time I watch him do it, because they make him run across a hallway barefoot that's covered in crucifixes. He gets to the door is locked. He's like, oh, he has to go back to the middle of the room, and they have a big bowl of holy water with a key in it. It's just like, what are the chances? Terrible luck for a vampire. And then there's a whole thing where a giant wall of stakes at the end flies at him. So it's all very structural, and I couldn't tell you what Cordelia and Wesley do during the episode. I think it's very focused on Angel and Darla. I can't remember. But the kicker is...
And Gunn.
The kicker is that he completes the trials, and it does show kind of Darla learning something from him, from the fact that he genuinely will not give up on this, which is nice. I think it's a nice character note. He wins a second life for her, and then plot twist. Angel Butler is or I can't say Angel in a lowercase in this show. Heavenly Butler says, "Oh, you should have mentioned at the start of the trial she's already been given a second life, so she can't get 3 lives. That would be crazy." Yeah. So she's fucked. Basically, it's like the result of it. And then the real reveal at the end is that when they're like, she's like, "I'm going to accept this. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to have some character development. I'm going to die a good person." Lindsay kicks the door down. Once again, Angel is easily tased when the plot requires him to be overwhelmed by security forces, and he's made to watch as Drusilla sires Darla. Dun, dun, dun. Drusilla's alive. She's here. She's part of the plot.
Yeah, I knew she was alive. There's no question mark about that.
Yeah, but we haven't seen her in the present day in a while. Like,
we haven't seen her in the present day since the end of season 2. Yeah.
Oh, Buffy. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And there's this whole bit which I don't believe this plot point at all. Darla's going around vampire dive bars trying to get someone to sire her, and can only find shitty vampires in the 90s who don't know how to do it. But it's like, how hard, like, you don't need to get Drusilla in to do this. Like, how hard is it to get someone to sire you?
Yeah, 100%.
So that was all perfectly enjoyable. And then something which you may not recall, but one of the plot points that I guess threaded back in from this is, because Darla doesn't use the extra life that she wins from this trial, that life is used for Conger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to be conceived. And that's why she's able to have a damn fear baby.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would easily give this like 6 feminist gestures.
Wait, did they have sex at some point so in the last couple episodes?
No, maybe they have sex in the future.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
Oh, actually, sorry. Yeah, I think later in season 2, he does have sex with her when he reaches rock bottom. And she's like, "You're jealous now." And he's like, "No. That was my perfect moment of despair."
Oh, God.
Yeah. And also, I don't know how to use a condom because, like, I've been a vampire since 1820 or whatever.
I mean, yes, if I was him, I would be presuming I'd be shooting blanks.
Yeah, I think with vampires are sterile. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, I'd say 6. A generous 6.
Oh, I was going to say 7.
I'm not going to change it because that's the whole thing with you. 7
failed feminist gestures.
I say a very generous 6 because I was like, I enjoyed it. Monster of the Week-ish. I think it's going to climb as this season comes to the finale. But like, I thought, again, I really think that Darla does a fantastic job as a great regular cast member for this season and really elevates the show. So I'm always happy to see her.
Yeah, me too. Okay. That's enough of that.
Yeah,
I think.
Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us for this segment of Buffy Boys. We hope you're well. If you enjoy it, please do let us know. Tell your friends, tell your space demons.
Inspired.
And we'll see you next. What's our episode next week?
Into the Woods.
Into the Woods.
Yeah, the departure of Riley.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bad episode.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about Riley. Rip.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoy it. We loved talking to you too, and we'll see you next time on Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys. See yous.